Hey Brimits, what's going on? My name is Jordan and you're watching The Jordan Show. Today we are going to, talk about 10 horrifying facts about Genghis Khan, alright? Are you guys excited for this? I am actually really excited. Let's start the video. Roll it.
That's my best friend. That's my best friend.
We're looking at the top 10 brutal facts about the merciless Genghis Khan.
Number 10. Genghis Khan had molten silver poured into an enemy leader's eyes and ears.
He melted silver and he put them in the eyes and the ears of the enemy leaders. Oh my god. Whoa. This is just like, hey, number 10. I'm really scared to go through this whole fucking list. I don't know what's gonna happen by the end of this list. It's gonna be fucking crazy. This is fucking scary. Oh my god, just like through the whole video, just keep thinking, if we have this guy, Genghis Khan, these days, and he has the exact same powers, like as a leader, he's a leader of a very big country. That would be really fucking scary. Fucking scary.
There are many stories about the legendary brutality of Genghis Khan and his murderous exploits. Most of them tell a similar story of Khan asking enemies to surrender and then completely annihilating them and their families and friends if they refused. The Khan was proud of his murderous rampages and felt that the terror they inspired should be helpful in causing more enemies to join his side without him losing any men. While these campaigns of terror were business as usual for the Khan, many people didn't realize that if you made him feel personally insulted, he could be even more brutal and punishing than you could imagine. A large city led by a noble named, and I'm not sure about the pronunciation here, but in Nulchuk, he was in the way of Khan's conquest, and the Khan was in a very, very incensed mood. Years before, he had sent a large caravan of 500 men in the hopes of creating more trade routes in the region. Inalchuk had the entire caravan decimated and spurned the Khan's peace offering completely. So it was that the Khan killed the entire civilian population, utterly wrecked all remnants of the city, and killed the hated leader by having molten silver poured into his eyes and ears.
Fuck. That's really scary. He's just killing everybody and everything. Yeah, let's thank the universe that this guy is not around these days. Especially like if you think about it. Yeah, if he's here these days, probably he would have like nuclear weapons, and he will just like, hey, this country, like, hey, if you don't like surrender and just join my empire, I'm gonna nuke you now. Like, who can fuck? Like, anybody wants to fuck with this guy? Like if you fuck with him, he will just melt silver and put it in your eyes and ears. I don't know, like, fuck it. Like if I'm a president of some country or a king in some country, and somebody like Genghis Khan is like, hey, you surrender and join my empire, or I'll fucking kill you and kill everybody in your country, and I will just like, just take it. Yeah, just fucking take it. I don't care. You fucking, oh my god, this is really horrifying. Yeah, this fucking asshole.
This is perhaps one of the oldest examples of someone being brutally punished for shooting the messenger, something the Khan would clearly not tolerate. Number 9. The Mongols could not shed noble blood, but the alternatives were more brutal. The Mongols may have been known for killing scores of people without even trying, and for their brilliant combat tactics, but they also...
So always the Mongols. Always the Mongols. They were fucking crazy warriors, like so many civilizations just ended on the hands of the Mongols, because they're just like genius, like warriors. You know, that's what they were doing. There's absolutely nothing else. This is their whole fucking life.
Had certain honor rules even in times of war and murder. One of these ancient rules was that they could not spill noble blood. They took this very seriously, and if someone they had captured was of noble birth, they would not stab them, slash them, or kill them in any other normal war.
Like, what is a noble? How can you define noble blood? I don't know.
Wartime manner. However, this by no means meant that the noble was spared an awful and gruesome death. In fact, it would almost seem as if the Mongols followed the letter of the rule, but were showing their open contempt for it by trying to creatively punish their enemies as much as possible. If a noble was lucky, the Mongols who captured him would simply snap his neck. Quick, clean, and simple.
Whoa.
However, that was one of the rare...
So, like, not split, like, not cause them to bleed, they would just find other creative ways to kill them. Interesting. Oh my god, this is so fucking weird. And really scary too.
methods. They also liked to suffocate nobles, which is more painful and prolonged than a quick beheading. These may not seem that bad, but the most brutal was when they captured a large Russian force that had surrendered to them. Most of them were nobles, so they could not execute them in the normal manner. Instead, they confiscated their helpless enemies' weapons, laid their captives under a wooden platform, and then stood on top of the platform and literally partied their enemies to death.
Partied? Like literally?
We can't even imagine how horrific some of the platform and literally partied their enemies to death.
Partied their enemies to death. So they just found, that's what I understood, they found, they put all the enemies under a huge, like, wooden, like, you know, stage, and they start partying upon it with the, this is fucking crazy, but this is really interesting. I never, like, knew something like this, you know. They couldn't, you know, like, make them bleed, but they want to kill them, so they try to find any other creative ways to kill them. Interesting.
We can't even imagine how horrific such a death would be, but it certainly sounds like one of the most metal things ever. Number 8. Genghis Khan killed his half-brother as a child over a hunting dispute. When Genghis Khan was a child, his family was at odds with their clan and they were basically living on their own. His mother was taking care of 4 of her own children and 2 stepchildren, struggling just to make sure that everyone was fed. From a young age, Genghis, known in his early days as Temujin, learned that he would have to fight and kill for what he needed to get by. While Genghis helped feed his family, he didn't always agree with how food should be apportioned, and he especially found himself fighting with his half-brother, a child near his own age. One day, the two had a serious argument over some food that young Genghis had caught, and he took the dispute to his mother. To the anger of young Genghis, the mother actually sided against him, and he left in a...
Like, how young? You're talking about really young kids killing other people? Yeah. Oh, fucking hell, man. I don't know, like, what would cause a kid to kill, you know? This is like a way to find out how, like, a psychopath is, like, raised, I guess. Just, like they say, psychopaths show lack of empathy to animals when they are like young, and you sometimes would find them actually torturing some animal or something like that. So you would find, you know, okay, this person, he has some kind of psychopath tendencies, and you have to go ahead and try to help them with therapy and stuff like that. This is really very scary.
In a cold rage. While his half-brother was minding his own business with no idea what was coming, Genghis and his younger brother snuck up on their half-brother and killed him with their bows. When their mother found out, she was devastated and furious, but there would never be any consequence for their actions. Genghis is said to have never had any remorse whatsoever for the murder. In his eyes, it was justified. It was also likely the first taste of what would become a habit that he simply couldn't stop. Number 7. The Khan left a greater death toll in his wake than Joseph Stalin. Genghis Khan was not always as remembered as many brutal historical figures. Many people forget that the Great Khan's rampage left such a path of destruction that he irrevocably destroyed entire empires and enormous populations as a matter of habit. In recent days, people have pointed out that Stalin was responsible for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million deaths, which would make him more brutal than the Nazis. But he doesn't even hold a candle to the brutality of the Mongols under their leadership of the Khan. According to historical estimates, the Khan was responsible for the deaths of roughly 40 million people, and he was glad to boost those numbers whenever he got the chance. He likely felt that advertising his brutality was actually a good way to keep people afraid and more likely to submit.
This is fucking crazy. One person, like, one fucking person, because if one person died, like 60 million people, 40 million people died just because of one person. Yeah, this is fucking scary, guys. This is really scary. This guy is fucking crazy.
However, despite being an incredibly brutal murderer, the Khan was not entirely without mercy. He preferred to win without a blow simply by using his reputation, so he would always give his enemies a chance to join his empire first. In some cases, he even sent multiple emissaries before he went on a rampage and massacred their civilians and everything that had ever been a part of their culture or existence. The directive from the Khan was...
huge cultures, just fucking cultures, just disappeared because of this guy. Disappeared like nothing. It's like they never existed before.
Simple. Join him or die. Many chose to defy this mandate from Genghis Khan, and he made them and their entire populations pay with their lives. Number 6. The Khan turned a dangerous enemy archer into a useful long-term ally. Before long, the Khan's brutal, multi-continent spanning rampage was becoming a thing of legend, and his reputation began to precede him wherever he went. In battle, he was known for being an insanely fierce warrior and nigh untouchable in skill. There are many versions of the following legends, but they are all about an enemy archer named Jebe who caught the eye of Genghis Khan. The Mongols were fighting against an enemy clan when disaster nearly struck. An arrow struck the Khan's horse, putting him in a very dangerous position. However, the Mongols quickly turned the tide and sent the enemy clan running in fear for their lives, except for the archer, who had nearly shot the Khan himself. He rode bravely and boldly into the camp, asking to address the Khan himself. He admitted that he himself had shot the Khan's horse, and that he would accept his death for this deed.
Wow. These stories are really weird. Yeah, these stories are really... Like, after he shot the Khan, he just went to the camp and was like, hey, I did it, kill me. What? Why?
If he wished, but if he were to spare him, he would serve him as a loyal warrior. Some versions of the story claim that the arrow actually hit and injured the Khan himself, or at least struck his armor, and some even claim that the Khan lied down to protect his pride and the archer was bold enough to correct him. Whichever version is correct, it is known that the Khan decided to spare the archer and kept him in his army as one of the top commanders from that day. While the Khan may have been extremely brutal and often merciless, he was smart enough not to turn down an amazing ally when he saw one. Number 5. One of his Mongol enemies was known for boiling captured generals alive. While Genghis Khan was known for being many things, merciful was certainly not one of them. As we have mentioned, he was all too happy to brutally murder enemies and civilians who had peacefully surrendered. However, before Genghis Khan united the Mongols and began his true reign of conquest, he had rivals among the Mongols for leadership, and some of them were just as insane and barbaric as he was. One of them was known as Jamuka, and once, after achieving great victory, it was said that he burned the enemy generals in 70 cauldrons. Some scholars are unsure whether that's supposed to be an exact number, whether...
Oh my, this is just too heavy. Fucking assholes. It's like everybody has his like signature like move to kill the enemy leaders. Like one guy, he just like filled their eyes and ears with silver, and the other guy, he just like boil them to death. What the fuck? Why? Just fucking cut his head and that's it. What the fuck is wrong with these guys? Oh my god, this is fucking brutal.
Whether the cauldrons only held one person each, or whether it was simply meant to suggest a lot. Either way, the cruelty was so legendary that it supposedly caused some people to turn their support to Genghis, despite his own brutality. This could be because burning alive, while fitting within the rules of ways to kill nobles, is actually much more drawn out and horrific than Genghis's usual punishments for nobles. The Khan had enemies...
Oh, So they chose Khan, like Genghis Khan, to be the leader because he was less brutal than the other guy. Oh, fucking crazy motherfuckers.
His backs broken, there was the molten silver incident, and the mass trampling, but arguably all of these are less barbaric than boiling your enemy alive. It's been described as being so horrific that many watching in Europe when it was first instituted as a punishment fainted in shock and had to be carried away. The screams were allegedly horrific, and the sight of what it did to the human body was something that most people could not stand to watch. Number 4. Genghis Khan humiliated and enslaved people of other religions. Many people like to point out that Genghis Khan actively talked to and sought advice from holy men of all different religions, including Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and Taoism. Some people like to claim that this is evidence of him being more of a humanitarian. However, in this case, people are forgetting that the man was a brutal and merciless tyrant. While he may have been smart enough to learn about his enemies and all of their ways, he never showed any evidence in his life or rule of having the slightest bit of religious tolerance whatsoever. In fact, he had a special contempt for Jewish and Muslim people whom he openly referred to as slaves and humiliated by not allowing them to follow their own customs. He proclaimed that the Mongolians had conquered them, but they refused to eat Mongolian food. To the Khan, this was a complete affront to him. He had conquered them and allowed them to live within his kingdom, but they would only prepare food and eat it their way. He forbade them to eat any food that was not prepared by Mongolians, disallowing them from their customs. Muslims were not allowed to kill a sheep, and if they were caught, they would be guilty of a serious crime. Jewish people were also forbidden from following their practice of circumcision. As far as the Khan was concerned, if you lived in his kingdom, you followed his rules. It was likely that his study of other religions was mostly about learning how to better rule his enemies, as he had no patience for coexisting with other religions' quirks and differences. Number 3.
You know, I've tried Mongolian food. It's really good, so I don't know if they had it bad or not before, but yeah, like Mongolian food is nice. You know, they say like, I don't know if it's him or somebody else from the Mongolians, but they say that he captured Baghdad and he burned Dar al-Hikmah, which is the first library in the world, or the first university in the world, which set us as human beings, as a human race, 2,000 years, 2,000 years back, because it had all the knowledge of the golden century of Islam, or the golden, I don't know what they call it. Anywho, so yeah, this is what happened because of Genghis Khan.
He had his men used captured enemy bodies as shields in combat. In relatively recent history, Stalin used captured enemy soldiers, as well as his own country's convicted prisoners, as human shields in combat during World War II.
This is the worst thing that anybody can ever do. Yeah, this is fucking disgusting.
While diabolical and evil, it was also an effective strategy for the ruthless tyrant. During a very expensive war, he was able to rid himself of prisoners of all kinds who would be expensive to hold and use them instead as a way to win battles. While this may seem like one of the worst things done in history, it's certainly not the first time people have used human shields in combat. Throughout history, there have been many examples where prisoners or captured populations are forced to fight at the front lines of war. But before many of them had ever considered it, the Khan had already used and perfected the strategy. The Khan was selective when he came to who he would use as human shields for combat. Sometimes he would execute enemy soldiers who had surrendered expecting good treatment, and at other times, if they were truly skilled and had the right attitude, he might let them join his army. However, when he was in the mood, he would have his men take large numbers of surrendered enemy soldiers and force them to fight at the front lines. His men would goad the captured soldiers to fight as well as possible, and if they did, they were not put to the sword. They could prolong their deaths only by fighting for the Khan and his forces as well as they possibly could, and perhaps if they truly showed their worth, they could earn a rightful place in his forces. Number 2. While massacring a city and its population, he declared himself sent by God to punish them.
Wow. Wow. Sent by God to punish them. Wow.
While on his brutal rampage through the Khwarezmian Empire, he came upon the city of Samarkand. He was in an angry mood and ready to pounce and destroy anyone who got in his way. He had just come from the city of Atra, where he had killed the guy with molten silver. In his rage, he also declared to the inhabitants that he had been sent by God himself to punish them. He then absolutely annihilated all of the population and wiped the city off the face of the earth.
Fuck! This is brutal. This is fucking brutal. What the fuck is going on there? Yeah, it's really, like, it happened like, what, I don't know, I don't know, 700, 1,000 years ago or something like that. I don't know when it happened, but these fucking crazy assholes. Like, I think it's almost maybe 500 to 700 years ago, I guess. Yeah, something like this. But just hearing about it right now, it's just like goosebumps, and like in the bad way. Just like happened, and I don't know, all over my body. It's fucking crazy.
When he came to Samarkand, he met heavy resistance by well over 100,000 soldiers, but he eventually managed to wear them down by cutting off their water supply, bringing them down by slow attrition, and eventually breaking into the city proper. Some accounts claim that when Genghis Khan and his men razed the city, the soldiers found any pregnant women and stabbed them and removed the fetuses they found within. This could possibly be hyperbole by the writers of the story, hoping perhaps to make the Khan look evil, either to increase his reputation or to hurt it, but it would not be unsurprising if true, considering the Mongols' overall brutality. Some reports say that nearly 500,000 people were either killed or forced to flee the city, and when the Mongol rampage was finished, not even ruins remained. Number 1. The sacking of Urgench was arguably the most brutal and thorough massacre in history. Urgench was the last stop on the Great Khan's slaughter of the Khwarezmiya Empire, and they put up an absolutely ferocious fight. Normally the Khan could dominate his enemies in a short amount of time, but the battle dragged on for 6 months. Records say that even after they actually got inside the city, they were unable to begin looting and plundering as they normally did. The inside of the city was fortified, and the enemy fought using guerrilla warfare techniques from every house in the city. The Mongols quickly grew tired of this and decided that they needed to take more drastic measures. They decided that if they couldn't find all of the men who were hiding inside the city, they would just burn the entire city down.
This is really bad. Oh, fuck me, this is crazy. This is fucking... What the fuck, man? What the fuck? This is crazy. I'm actually like... Yeah. Thank you, Matthew, for this video. Fuck. Guys, I would like to take this moment to just take a break and ask you for, please, subscribe to this fucking channel and hit that like button. I'm actually like hurting. And by the way, this video is like sponsored by you guys from the donation link in the description down below. Thank you, Matthew, for this video. This is like, it's hurting me from inside, okay? And let's finish the video, and I'm gonna go for a walk after this. It's fucking crazy.
Upon the city being turned into a burned hulk of its original glory, the surviving enemy soldiers still continued to defy the Khan's forces. They knew ignominious death awaited them if they were captured by the Mongol forces, so they continued their defense to the death. The Khan allegedly had a dam diverted to flood and destroy what was left, and declared that any remaining civilian or soldier still alive was to be murdered, with no exceptions whatsoever. While it's unclear whether it's hyperbole or not, some sources say that the final massacre amounted to over 1 million people. If this is true, it would be one of the most massive genocides in a short period of time in the history of mankind.
On that note, thank you guys for watching. Please, don't forget to actually subscribe after all this. And if you reach the end of this fucking video, like, you are brave. You are a fucking brave motherfucker. This is not easy to fucking watch. I am really hurt from inside, like really hurt by just watching this video. And yeah, if you actually kept watching with me until the end, you would understand how I feel, really. Anywho, thank you guys for watching. Please, bye bye, see ya. I can't even talk. I'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.
That's my best friend. That's my best friend.